Let me begin by just saying that election law defines the rights of voters as a democracy. Let me say it again. Election law defines the rights of voters as a democracy. You weaken the rights of voters, you weaken the democracy. You strengthen the rights of voters, you strengthen the democracy. The most serious, the most deadly, the most lasting attacks on our democracy have not been from invasion. It's come from within. And here we are today. And here we are today. For the past many, many months, we have heard a constant drumbeat from former President Donald Trump and his allies that if he lost this election, it was because of fraud. The big steal. The election was going to be stolen from him. And I'm not going to go through all of that again because Senator Quornbach and Walz and Bolcom and others have done a really good job, if you were listening, to what has been going on in this country. But let me just say that the big lie, that big lie, has been debunked. It has been debunked more than 100 times in courts of law because the Trump lawyers failed to produce a shred of evidence that there was some kind of voter fraud that had occurred that denied him his big win. Stop it. We're leaders. Our job is to tell the truth. Integrity is about honesty. This bill is anything but integrity. I find it absolutely bewildering that we're even debating this bill. In Iowa, Republicans, heck, you won! You won big in 2020 here. But nationally, you lost the presidency. And so is that the excuse? Really? That's the excuse that we should deny Iowans the right to vote by mail? Or make it harder for them to vote by mail? That's the excuse we're going to use by making it harder for them to cast their vote at a satellite voting location or easier to take them off the voting rolls? Really? That's honesty? That's integrity? Why do you want to silence the voice of your constituents? Why do you want to do that? Especially the voice of the elderly in your district, the people with a disability, the poor. I think many of you may have met my daughter. Now, her functioning level was quite low. She was a toddler her whole life. I had a baby in my life forever. And she couldn't vote. But I can tell you a lot of the young people that rode the bus with her to and from her work site, they did. They were competent and capable of voting, and quite frankly, they knew more about what was going on in the election cycle than some of the people whose doors I knocked. They asked me incredibly great questions when I got on that bus to take that child off. And they knew who was running against whom, in what election. And yet you want to make it harder for those same adults to exercise their constitutional right. We know this is a national effort. It's been in the news. National effort by Republicans in at least 33 states. And the effort really is to try and squeeze mail voting out of existence in this country. I mentioned earlier, 52% of Republicans in this state voted by mail in 2020. 52%. Many more Democrats, about 76% of the Democrats voted by mail. But I'll tell you, we have had early voting in this state for about almost 40 years. Truly. And I was part of this whole effort when I was still in the House to actually expand mail voting. And we did that because we recognized then that family life was changing dramatically. Both parents were working outside the home, they were working longer hours, they were working odd hours. More and more people just had a harder time being able to exercise that right to vote. So we made it a little easier by letting them be able to do that by mail. When you shorten the window, you make it harder. Not easier, harder. And harder on our election officials at the local level. Harder to try and make any corrections on a ballot if you made some kind of mistake, like forgetting to sign the affidavit envelope. Harder. Harder when you have a law that now says if your vote isn't in that auditor's office by 8 p.m. election night, your vote will not count. 6,500 Iowans' votes would not have counted in 2020 had this been the law. Many of them in your districts. Is that okay with you? Really? That's okay. I have been involved in politics since I was 20 years old. I've worked as a volunteer and a staffer from schoolhouse to White House. I've been an elected official since 1993. And nothing is more disgusting than winning an election by cheating. And quite frankly, I believe that that is what we're doing today. The part that probably bothers me even more is some of the more punitive provisions in this piece of legislation. And I'm probably going to get called on a point of order on this too, and that's okay. Because quite frankly, it reads like the rise of authoritarianism. I have been watching what's gone on in this country for the past few years, and I'm beginning to believe that we have a three-party de facto system. Democrats, Republican establishment, Republican authoritarians. This is your chance today to stand up for democracy, to protect the most fundamental of all of our constitutional rights. It all starts with voting. And I don't think you want to turn the clock back to the day when only white men who own property could vote. Growing up in very Catholic Dubuque, believe me, I remember all too well the good sisters talking about civil rights, making sure that every person in this country had the right to vote, that it was our duty to form a more perfect union. Stand up for democracy today. Vote against Senate File 413. Thank you, Mr. President.